Hello, everyone. I'm excited to welcome you all to another exciting Oxygen XML Live event. My name is Alim Belu, and I will be your host for today's webinar titled OpenAPI Editing, Testing, and Documenting. I believe that most of you that are joining us today are familiar with OpenAPI. But for those that might not be as familiar with it, let me tell you that OpenAPI is a community-driven open specification that defines a language-agnostic interface used to describe, produce, consume, and visualize RESTful APIs and web services. OpenAPI documents describe the API or its elements and are represented in either YAML or JSON formats. Now, to help you discover the support offered in Oxygen for OpenAPI documents, as well as how to create, edit, test, and generate documentation, we invited today our colleague Octavian Nadolu, project manager at Synchrosoft, so he can take the stage to bring us another one of his highly informative presentations on today's subject. Now, Octavian will be covering a lot for today's event, so let me take just a few moments to share with you some useful information that you need to know when it comes to the Oxygen Live events. As always, all of our webinars are being recorded, so today's event makes no difference. After the webinar comes to an end, the recording will be made available on the event page on our site, oxygenxml.com, along with Octavian's presentation slides and samples, and also the recording will be uploaded on our YouTube channel titled Oxygen XML, where we encourage you to take a look at the impressive library of tutorials that are there for you. Regarding Octavian's presentation slides, he also uploaded them in the handouts tab here in the GoToWebinar interface. So you can download them directly from there. And another important aspect is that as we go along, we encourage you to ask us questions by using the questions panel from the GoToWebinar interface, where two of our colleagues, Theo and Florine, will assist us by answering to all of your questions in real time. And of course, we will be addressing the questions again at the end in a Q&A session for the benefit of everyone joining us today. Now, with this being said, let us give a warm welcome to Octavian Nadolu. Hello, Octavian.
Hello, Aline. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining this webinar. So I will start the presentation. So today we'll discuss about OpenAPI and we'll discuss about the editing, testing, and documenting OpenAPIs. So I have here the agenda of the presentation. We'll discuss about the OpenAPI specification, then how you can edit OpenAPI documents, how you can use a tester tool to check if your API is correct, and how you can generate documentation from an OpenAPI specification. So what is OpenAPI? So OpenAPI is a specification. It's a format that allows you to describe and document your API. So if you have an API and you want to be available and to allow humans and computers to discover your API, you can define this OpenAPI, and then the humans and the computers can understand and know the capabilities of the service and what can they do with your service. This specification is developed within the OpenAPI's website, and you can check for more details the OpenAPI initiative website. So OpenAPI documents can be written in YAML or JSON formats and describes the inputs and the outputs of an API. Includes information such as where the API is hosted, the server that you want to make available, or the servers, the type of authorization that you need to access the API, and details about the operation that can be performed on your API. And I have here a simple example, both in JSON and YAML. So in an OpenAPI, you need to define the version that you are using, and you can use 3.1, 3.0, or older versions. Here it's a 3.1 version. Then you need to define information about your API, such as the title of the API, the version that you want to publish, the servers that are available, and then the paths. And similar, you can do the same thing in YAML. And for the paths, you define the paths from your server, such as this one, the breed, and you can have also a parameter with the breed name, and then check the images. And for this path, you can define the operation, such as this one, the get operation, and then define the parameters and how you expect to have the response. And in the parameters, you can define the parameters for your operation, and in the response, you can define in the content how you expect to have the response. And I will show you some examples. And similarly, you see in the YAML format the same example. There are different versions of the OpenAPI that you can create. The latest is OpenAPI 3.1. You can also create OpenAPI 3.0 or older version, OpenAPI 2.0, that is called also Swagger 2.0. And there are also other versions of Swagger. So OpenAPI started to evolve from the Swagger specification and became an OpenAPI specification starting with 2.0 and then 3.0 and 3.1. There are some changes between these versions, and I added here some structural changes that were made between Swagger or OpenAPI 2.0 and OpenAPI 3.0. Here there were a lot of structural changes in the specification, and added also on the title here a link that takes you to a blog post with these changes if you want to read more about this. Then there is also OpenAPI 3.0 that evolved in OpenAPI 3.1. The big change in OpenAPI 3.1 is that it supports JSON Schema. So now in OpenAPI, it fully supports JSON Schema, and there are also other changes added also for this, a link that takes you to the OpenAPI initiative, where is a blog with all the changes that were made between these two versions. For example, the example was changing examples and so on. I will not go in too many details here. Before I go forward, I have a question for you. Do you use OpenAPI? And in case if you're using, what version are you using? And I will ask Aline to start the poll. So the answer are no, I'm not using, or yes, I'm using 3.1, or yes, I'm using 3.0, or maybe older version 2.0 or older. And here's it's a question with multiple answers, so maybe you are using older versions. After the poll will finish, so everyone will vote, will share the information with you. I'll leave this for a few moments so everyone can vote. I think we can stop it. So I see that most of you are not using OpenAPI, and it's a good webinar, so you can understand what to do with OpenAPI specification. For those that are using, you will see the support that we provide in Oxygen for this specification. So we can go forward. So in order to create an open API, you can use an editor or an application that will allow you to design and create your API. And then from this, you can generate maybe your application, or you can write your application based on the API that you are creating. Another approach is to have the code, have the application, and then annotate it. And there are tools that allow you to generate the API directly from the code. Both ways are used, so depending on the needs and what tools you want to use. Then from the OpenAPI, you can use tools to generate documentation. You can use tools to generate a server or a client, a stub of server that then can be developed. In Oxygen, we provide support to edit OpenAPI documents, and you can open such a document, and you have syntax highlighting, you have validation against schema, you have content completion, an outline view, search replace operation, and the full support that we provide for so an environment for editing documents and version control to store your files and so on. I'll show you an example. So I'll switch to Oxygen, and I have this OpenAPI schema here. I'll double click, and it looks something like this in Oxygen. So here you can easily edit the document. You have format and indent support. You have actions to associate schema, actions on the contextual menu specific for this type of editor. And similarly, if you have the OpenAPI in YAML format, also here you can easily edit the YAML just by using the support that we provide for YAML documents. And also here you have format and indent and action specific to the editing support that we provide in Oxygen. If you want to validate your OpenAPI documents, you can do this by associating a schema. And the OpenAPI initiative has a JSON schema for each version of the OpenAPI that you can use to validate OpenAPI documents. I downloaded these files, and I can use them to create a validation scenario and then apply them on the OpenAPI documents. And you'll have errors presented in the document, and you'll make sure that your document is valid accordingly to the specification. I can show you an example here. So I have these OpenAPI schemas that I downloaded here, and there are different versions. So there is 2.0, 3.0, 3.1. The 3.1, I changed it a little bit, so it's not the original version. I converted to draft 7. The original, it's draft 2020. And I added also some annotation from directly from the specification here on the properties. So I improved it a little bit. And I can use this schema to validate my document. So I can go, for example, on the JSON file, and I can go in the configure validation scenario. And here I can create a scenario to validate this with the 3.1 schema. For this, I can use new. Then here I can specify the schema, which is OpenAPI 3.1. And this is a generic scenario set, can be applied on any JSON document, and it will be valid with this schema. So you can apply this on one file, you can apply this on a folder or on a project. So I will set a generic name. Let's say OpenAPI 3.1. And now I save this in my project, and I can share this with everyone that is using this project. So if I share this project with you, you'll have the same validation, and you can reuse this scenario for other documents, or you can apply it on all the project just by selecting, for example, the files or the folders from here and using the validate action from here, or the configure validation, and associate the scenario on the entire folder. In my case, I associated on this file, And here, for example, if I make a mistake such as this one, I change the version, I mistyped the version or the title, or maybe the URL here it's not added correctly, or I do not add the version of the OpenAPI correctly, automatically you'll get these errors as you type. And you can also use the validate action from here, and you'll get the errors displaying the results panel here. So as you type, you'll get these problems presented, and you can focus them to check them, and you can correct them and make sure that your document is valid, it's according to the specification. A similar thing I can do also with the YAML. So I can create a validation scenario that will validate with the OpenAPI 3.0 or 3.1 schema. I will use the same scenario and I will duplicate it, but this time I want to apply it on YAML documents. So I'll select here that these documents will be validated as YAML, and then I can also type here YAML, so I know that this scenario is for YAML documents. Then I will apply this. And also in this case, if I type some properties that are not valid here, or some information that is not correct in the version, so on, you'll get all these presented as problems in the editor. And as I told you, you can do this also from the project. You can, if you have already associated the scenario, you just click validate here and get all the problems from for the files that you want to validate. Then we provide also content completion based on the JSON schema. So properties and values defined in the JSON schema are presented in the content completion window, and it helps you to create the schema. And we provide also annotations from the schema, so you can read more about the properties that are defined in the schema. And I will show you an example also for this. So this support is available only for JSON documents. I'll undo the changes, so I'll make the document valid. So if I type here enter, automatically I get all the properties that can be inserted in this place, and I get also inserted the required content, and I have also annotations, and I can read more about the properties. If I don't know what they do, I can read more and I understand what they do, so I can safely create my OpenAPI document. Then you have also an outline view for the OpenAPI document, so you can visualize the structure of the document. You can search for properties, and this is synchronized with the editor, so you can easily find where you are in the editor just looking at the outline view. And I can show you also this outline view that is presented here in the left. So in this case, it's a simple OpenAPI schema with just one path and one response. It's not very complex. If I open, for example, this schema, which is a schema for our text search service, here, for example, I can visualize the paths. I have multiple paths here. I can select them. I can go to edit them. I can visualize the components that are defined in my schema. I can filter them. For example, let's say I want to check all the paths that are web help. I can just type some letters, use wildcards, and find the paths that I need. And also, if I'm in one place in the editor, automatically I can visualize in the outline where I am. So I am the index path in the post operation, or here I go in the search. So it automatically selects in the outline the location of your of the caret from the editor. Then in OpenAPI, you can use also JSON Schema. And you can use it to describe the data object both for the request and the response. This is fully supported, as I told you, starting with OpenAPI 3.1. And we provide good support to edit JSON schemas, and you can edit the JSON schema directly in the OpenAPI file, or you can edit separately where we provide the specialized editor. And I can show you an example also for this. So I have this OpenAPI schema with the texture service, and if I go here in the search path, I have a request body, and this request body, it's defined in the search options schema, that it's an external schema, and I can control click and open the schema. This is near the OpenAPI file, and I can visualize the structure. And here I can also edit this in a visual editor, so I can mark properties as required. I can reorder, for example, some properties. Maybe I don't want to have it in these options passed to the OpenAPI through the service. I can add, for example, very easily new properties. I can use the whole support, the entire support that we have for creating JSON schemas. I will not go too much into this. We had 2 weeks ago a webinar on how to edit JSON schema. So if you want to learn more about this JSON schema support, you can check that webinar, and we also provide some tutorials on our website. I added them also in the slides. So the idea is that in case you want to edit your JSON schema in a separate file, you have this support for editing, both in the design mode or in the text mode. We have also here content completion based on the schema with annotations and links to the specification, content completion for values, for example. So you can benefit of the entire support that we have. In case you have the schema, for example, for the response, we have defined it here directly in the file, and we can navigate just by control click to these references, and you can edit also here the schema. So you can type here enter, and then you can insert new properties and values. For example, you can change the type by selecting the correct type for the JSON schema. So we provide also here support to edit JSON schema, and this is based on the OpenAPI schema that we have here. So this is a good thing if you want to use OpenAPI with the JSON schema, and in Oxygen you have full support and the specialized editor with a lot of features. You have validation, editing, different pages to edit the documents, a diagram page, but you have also tools to generate documentation or generate sample files from a JSON schema, so you can generate a step of files, for example, for testing. You can generate also JSON schema from a JSON file. If you don't know how to create a schema for a file, you can use this and then customize it. You can even convert XSD to JSON schema. In case you have a service that uses XSD, then you can convert this to JSON schema and then use it in your OpenAPI. I have another question for you here. How do you create or intend to create your OpenAPI? And I added here 2 answers. So you want to edit or design your OpenAPI in the specialized tool, or you want to generate the API from code. This is also questions with multiple answers. Maybe you want to do it both ways. So depending on the needs that that you have when you are developing the applications. So I'll leave this for a few moments so everyone can answer, and then we'll share the results. I think we can stop to share. Okay. So I see that most of you are want to edit and design the OpenAPI, and there are also 55% that are generating the API. Either way, it's a good thing to have also an editor to edit the documentation and to make other changes in your OpenAPI files. And I'll show you more about the support that we have. So for OpenAPI documents, we provide also a built-in framework that will allow you to edit this type of documents in a visual interface. And for example, you can edit the documentation. We provide form control, so you can easily make changes, collapsible sections, and all this is customizable. So you can customize this as you want just by using CSS. And I'll show you what we have. So for example, for this schema, I can switch to the author page, or maybe let's check this one. So I can switch to the author page, and here I can visualize that I have the version here specified that I can also change, but using a drop-down menu. I can edit the documentation very easily here, new documentation. Then I can also change other information such as servers or description for the server, but you can also force this to be not enabled for editing. Then for the paths, these are presented with different colors, the operations. So you have put operation, delete, get with blue, and then you can also expand and collapse these sections and read more about each part. And you have also links that point you, for example, to the schema that can be in the current file or can be external. So it's easy to read and to check your documentation and write your documentation directly in the author page. And we provide this just by using a framework that you can find it here in the document type association. There is the OpenAPI framework, and all this is customized using this OpenAPI CSS. And you can find it in the Oxygen installation in the JSON framework. There is this CSS, OpenAPI CSS. And in case you want to present or you want to change something in your documentation, you can customize it and have it as you want. I will open it. For example, I linked here the JSON framework, and if I open this file, it looks something like this. So it's a simple CSS where we provide some custom actions, but you can specify, for example, here the values that are presented in the combos. You can specify which parts of the specification can be edited. You can specify colors or which parts are foldable or not, and so on. Then you have your documents, you edit the documentation. You can also generate documentation. And we provide a tool that allows you to generate the documentation in HTML format. So you can use this tool to generate the HTML and then publish the documentation. So everyone can know what API can access, what are the operation that can be performed on your server, and what parameters that it can set. And I will show you an example. So let's, for example, let's generate documentation for this file. I will save it, and then I can go here in the tools, generate documentation, and I can select the OpenAPI documentation. Here you can select the file that you want to generate the documentation for, and then the location where you want to generate the documentation. You can choose to open the result in the browser. Then you can split the documentation in multiple files. You can split it by location or by component. I'll choose it to have it in one file, for example, in my in this generation. Then you can also choose what to add in the documentation. So you can add the annotations, you can add the references between the components or not. You can add also the diagrams, the JSON schema diagram. So for each schema that is added in your specification are generated also the diagrams, so you can understand better the structure of the schema. Then constraints, properties, and other information. Then I can hit generate, and I have this schema created, and I have here the components with information about my API, then the servers that can be used to access the API, the paths, and for each path I have the operations that can be performed, so the post, the put, depending on the operation that you want to perform. Then if we are going to the operation, you can see the parameters, schemas for each parameters, the content for example, for the body, and you can navigate and visualize how the structure of the schema should be provided in the body. And you have also this diagram that allows you to visualize it, and you can go forward and click on this to see the exact content that you need to pass. And we can see here the values that are expected to be passed in this parameter, for example. You have also the source code. Then you can also choose to, for example, hide some places, collapse it just by using these buttons here. So if you want to collapse the use by, the compositors, or maybe the diagrams and have a more compact schema, you can use these buttons here and have it more compact created. So you can use the OpenAPI documentation generator to generate your documentation in HTML file. You can split it in multiple files in case it's a big documentation. You have references. You can also choose to include or exclude some of the details from the generation, and we provide also these diagrams for each schema that is added in the documentation. So you can provide more information to the users to understand how the schema should be added. Then we provide also a tool to test your OpenAPI service. And this is an interface that will allow you to choose the OpenAPI schema, and depending on the paths that you select, the server and the operation, it automatically generates the parameters, the body, so you can send a valid request to the server, and then it presents back the response, and you can check if it's valid. So this type of testing can work both on JSON or YAML format OpenAPIs. And I will show you how to test some OpenAPIs. So let me go back in Oxygen. We can test, for example, this simple API, which connects to the server and has a single path with the breed name, and it gets some images. And as parameters, we see that we have a required parameter with breed name, which is used here in the path. And then the response should be a message with an array of paths. And let me open the tester tool. So you can go here in the tools, JSON tools, OpenAPI tester, and then select the OpenAPI schema that you want to test. This is loaded here in the OpenAPI tester. And here you can change, for example, the server. In my case, it's a simple schema, so I don't need to change too many things here. I'll show you also a more complex schema. So this just connects to the server, connects to this path, and it gets some images of some dogs. And let's say we want to get some images for the beagle breed. So we can type here beagle, and we can choose to open the response here in the response field, and we get the message with all the paths of the images. Or you can choose to open the response in the editor, and you'll have it something like this. And I can control click to see the images with some nice dogs here, beagle dogs. And you can do the same thing with YAML format schema. So I can select here the YAML OpenAPI. I don't know if, I hope I did not break it. So it's not valid, and we notice that because it's not valid, the data is not loaded correctly. So I need to undo the changes that I made in the schema and make it valid. And then I will reload it again, and we see that we have the information reloaded here. And let's see, have another request here, and this time we'll see the husky dogs. Send it, and we get some nice images with some husky dogs, very cute dogs. So you can use this tester to check if your service it works correctly, or a service works correctly. And for example, if I misspelled some words here, it will get a response with okay, this does not exist. So depending on the request that you make, you'll have a different response and a different status, and also status presented here in the results. Let me try another schema, more complex one. I have here in the OpenAPI schema with Farmstyle. And here we have two servers. There's a local server, then there is a remote one. I'll choose the remote one. Then here I have some paths. So I can select the reviews to get the reviews or to post a review. I can choose to create a user or generate a token. So for the reviews, I want to get first all the reviews to see how they look like. So I can see that I have a parameter that is not required and needs to be a number. So I can say, okay, I want to get the reviews with maximum rating 4. And I get all the reviews presented here. Then I can choose, for example, to create a user. So I'll select the post path. And for the authentication, I don't need an authentication to create a user. And in the body, automatically is generated the content that needs to be passed to the server. And this is generated from the schema. So if I open the Farmstyle schema here, just a second, and I go to the path to the users, and I have the post operation. We have a request body, and based on the schema that is defined here, we generate automatically the information that needs to be passed to the server. So you need a username, a password, and the full name. I don't know, let's create a username let's say username API, and the password will be password, and the full name will be webinar open API. Okay, I can send this request, and the username already exists, so I need to create a new one. Let's say username 2. So this time I had I got lucky, so I have this username API 2, and then I can go to generate a token. So I can go to the tokens, and I have no parameters. I don't need an authentication, but I need a username and password, and the username is OpenAPI 2, and the password is password. Then I have a token now, and because I have a token, I can use this token. So I'll copy it from here and post reviews on the server. So I can go to the reviews, and I can use the post operation, and in the request body I can type a message from my webinar, and I can type also rating, let's say 4. And for authentication I need a token. So depending on the schema, automatically it generates here the information that needs to be passed to the server. So you need an authentication for this operation to post messages, and you need to pass this message and rating. And I can send this. I can get that the message was created. So this is the message from my webinar, and I can check it also if this is on the server. So I can use again the get operation, get all with rating 4, and I get the result. Then I can search, for example, for my messages here and has the rating 4. So you can use this this tool to test your API, and it helps you to set the data that needs to be passed to the server. It mark the required parameters. Depending on the authentication, it will present here what authentication you need depending on the operation that you select. And it generates also the request body automatically based on the schema that it's added in your OpenAPI specification. We intend also to improve this and make some changes to allow you to run multiple tests. For example, just pass this information through a schema, let's say, to pass multiple requests and then have the asserts on the responses, and maybe have a report with all the failed and completed tests. We have also support in Oxygen to edit JSON and also other type of APIs, and this is also based on the JSON schema. So for example, you can edit async API just by using the JSON schema that async API provides, or JSON LD, that it's a lightweight linked data format, also provides a JSON schema, and you can benefit of the support just by associating the schema. And we intend to add this as built-in in the future. So for example, let me close all these files. For example, I have here an async API schema that it's in YAML and JSON format. And you can associate the schema using a validation scenario. So I have here already associated the async API schema. It's located somewhere here in the project, and you can download it from the GitHub repository. But I'll share these samples with you if you want to test them also with the scenarios, so you can test them in Oxygen. So if you have this schema associated, then you can easily edit also this type of documents, and you have also here content completion. You have annotation based on the information from the schema, and you have also validation. So if I type something that is not correct here, automatically this will be highlighted. And you can also edit this type of schema, and you have the support, similar support, editing support as OpenAPI. In case you are using YAML, also here you can create an association, and I also did this and selected the same schema. And also based on the schema, you'll have validation, so you'll make sure that your document is valid according to the async API specification 2.0. For JSON LD, I created also here a sample JSON format and YAML format, and I downloaded the JSON LD schema. Then I created similarly as we did for OpenAPI this scenario, and I associated the schema. And now I also have content completion based on the schema, validation, and annotation, so you can edit this type of documents and add more information about the schema. And similarly for YAML, where I associated the schema, and also here you can edit it and have information added accordingly to the schema. So you can edit any type of documents just by providing a JSON schema, and you can customize also your schemas depending on your needs. So you can use the specification, the schemas from the specification, but maybe you don't want to allow some information in your documents, and then you can filter them and provide them as you want. So as a conclusion, we provide support to edit and design OpenAPI documents based on JSON schema. We provide this editing environment based on associating JSON schema with content completion and validation. You can also edit and design JSON schema documents, and here we have a specialized editor with a diagram view and a lot of tools that can be used for JSON schema. You can also edit the documentation for OpenAPI documents, because we provide a framework that it's also customizable, and then you can also generate documentation using our tool, and we want to improve also this generation in the future. And you can test using the tester. You just need to pass some parameters to the server, and you can check if your server works correctly. Of course, we have also future plans, and we also expect for your feedback to be provided. We intend to improve the editing and validation for OpenAPI documents, and we intend to provide a framework that will automatically detect if a document is OpenAPI and provide this content completion and validation automatically. And maybe also for other language such as Async API or JSON LD. Then we intend to provide also better authoring support and provide support to edit, for example, markdown documentation that it's added in OpenAPI documentation. We want to integrate the OpenAPI documentation with data. So you can convert, for example, an OpenAPI to data topics, and we want also to provide support to generate the documentation in your documentation, your data documentation together with OpenAPI documentation. In case you, for example, you refer an OpenAPI schema, you can generate in the web help support that we provide directly this documentation. We intend to add these scenarios for OpenAPI, so you can run tests automatically on the server. So you just need to pass some parameters, maybe in a JSON or YAML format, and then add there also the responses and check if they are correct. And another future plan is to add support for JSON Schema 2012, which is the latest JSON Schema version. And this is fully supported in OpenAPI 3.1. Right now we support the JSON Schema draft 4, draft 6, and draft 7. The latest draft is supported in backward compatibility mode as draft 7. I have a question for you here. What features are the most important for you? And I added here just 4 of them because we can add only 4 responses, but you can also add multiple responses in the questions panel. So I'll ask Aline to start the poll. And the responses will be, for example, to improve the documentation, to improve the editing and validation for OpenAPI documents. I'll start the poll. I don't know. Oh, it started. Okay, so to improve the editing and validation for OpenAPI, to improve the documentation by providing a better output and providing data output from OpenAPI, test scenarios, or the latest JSON Schema version. These are some of the targets that that we have. So this also depends on the feedback that we have from you. So your feedback is very important for us. I think we can stop. So thank you for the feedback. So most of you want more support for editing, also support for documentation, and we'll focus on this. We have some votes for the test scenarios and some votes for the latest version, JSON Schema version. So thank you for your feedback. You can also type more feature requests in the questions panel if you want, or you can send them to us. I added also some resources here. So I have here a link to our page where we describe the OpenAPI support that we have in Oxygen, and some links to the documentation where is the OpenAPI tester and the OpenAPI documentation tool if you want to learn more about this, and links to the OpenAPI specification, JSONschema.org, async API on JSON-LD. There are also some video demonstrations with JSON Schema, introduction to JSON Schema, and the tools that we have for authoring or tools for JSON validation, editing, and querying, if you want to check more about this. So thank you very much. I think we can start questions. Maybe Aline will help us with some questions for you, and if you want to address more questions, we have some time to respond to them.
Thank you, Octavian. Thank you for another great and highly informative presentation. And also a big thank you to all the people from our audience that asked us questions during Octavian's presentation. So let me try to answer some of your questions if you don't mind. First question, how does editing OpenAPI specification in Oxygen compared to dedicated tools like Swagger Editor or Studio Epicure? Well, Oxygen provides editing support based on JSON schema. You can edit any type of JSON or YAML document based on JSON schema, and also you are getting the benefit of the Oxygen tools and plugins such as Conversion, the Git plugin, SVM plugin, or Compare. Um, the same with the benefit of the JSON schema editing support. And also a huge pro is that you have a customizable authoring mode. For any of these questions, Octavian also can jump in at any moment and provide further details if he wants.
I think it's a good answer, and yes, we provide an environment. It's different from the other application maybe. Swagger or other IntelliJ or other application that are providing support have a different approach and are focusing only on this on generating this type of and testing this type of documents. We provide a larger support and in a different way based on the specification. And it's good to have different approaches, and it's good to have tools that will allow you to edit the specification. So if you are using files that conforms to the specification, it's easier to go from one application to another and use any application that you want.
Let's go to the next question. Does the OpenAPI tester work with external references? As a quick answer, I can tell you yes, you can have external references in your OpenAPI document, and the tester will resolve these references. Octavian, is this right? Okay, let's move on to the next. Oh, sorry.
I
think you
stopped
were
the
muted.
microphone and I
Yeah, yeah,
without the mic. Doesn't matter.
no worries.
So yes, yeah. So you can generate OpenAPI. Either you can test your OpenAPI either if you have references, and all the support in Oxygen works if you have references to other components or other schema, and you have separate the components in different files.
Thank you. Can I generate OpenAPI server or a client using Oxygen? And unfortunately, no, we do not have this support at the moment, but we definitely will be considering adding it in a future version. Question number 4. What is the difference between OpenAPI and REST API? Well, OpenAPI specification is a standard for defining REST APIs. So to access a REST service, the client needs to know the REST API that service is offering. So there must be documentation, and you need to write code according to that documentation. Well, with OpenAPI, this step is automated. Octavian, do you have any
Yes.
details?
No,
Oh,
it was a good response.
perfect. Okay, let's go to some more of the questions that were asked during your presentation. Can the auto-generated documentation be styled for branding purposes?
You can style it, but you can style it. We do not provide this support automatically. You can take the result being an HTML file, and you can style it. It's just an HTML, and you can add their images or what do you want to have it. So yes, you can do this, but we do not provide a built-in support. Let's say you just take the result and you can convert it as you want.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next question that I can provide an answer for. Does Oxygen already have or is planning to add support for GraphQL? Well, it's not in our future plans yet, but we will analyze it for sure. And of course, if there will be more requests from you, our users, we will certainly not be ignoring them. So we will be analyzing uh, this request. Uh, well, Octavian, for now, we do not have any other questions. So I think we can move on from the Q&A section to the ending part of this webinar. And I will be taking control really fast. Okay, as a reminder, this event is being recorded because I saw that some of you were asking this. And you will find the recording on the event page starting tomorrow, along with Octavian's sample files and the presentation slides. And also, as a reminder, you still have a few moments to download the presentation slides that Octavian uploaded at the beginning of this presentation. You can find them in the handouts panel from the GoToWebinar interface. And if you have any comments or questions regarding today's presentation or feedback, you can write to us directly by using the Oxygen feedback commenting platform that you can see here on the event page. Now, before saying goodbye, let me say a few words about our upcoming live webinar. Next week on April 13, we will be meeting Julian Licor again to help us continue the journey into defining the look and format of PDF documents with the use of CSS. So he will be bringing us another extensive tutorial, this time dedicated to adding custom fonts in your CSS. This will be part 3 of his transforming data documents to PDF using CSS series. I heard from him that he still has another part planned, because we all know that the road to becoming advanced in a specific subject is a long and tedious one. So with Julian's help, and of course with Oxygen's help, now this doesn't need to be the case anymore. And also we encourage you to take a look at our events page, where you can also find the links to register for free to all of our future events. The events page can be found on our oxygenxml.com official site. So again, reaching the end of our event, and me repeating myself, let me thank Octavian again for sharing with us his this comprehensive presentation and knowledge with all of us. So thank you, Octavian.
Thank you, Aline, and thank you everybody for joining. If you have questions and if you want to send us feedback, you can send it on the webinar page, or you can send it directly to us, to our support email address. I'll take a look again on the questions, and if we miss something, I will reply it. So thank you for the feedback. Thank you for joining, and goodbye.
And just as for a closer, I need to also thank our two colleagues, Theo and Florine, for helping us backstage with your questions that were addressed through the GoToWebinar interface. And of course, the biggest of thank yous is destined to you all for joining us again this week for another live Oxygen event. So until next week, stay safe and have a wonderful day or evening. Bye-bye.